Hello! This time I will show you how to add a new component to the page. So currently we just have the image, title and a subtitle and nothing else. So if we want to scroll down and add more things to the page, we can do the next thing. So we have the web page, and under that we can add another component called portfolio component. Let's add it and run the code. Nothing happens. Okay. Why is that so? Because we just added a component, we stored it in the function portfolio component, but we don't call this function anywhere. So in order to show the component on the page, we have to call the function on our web page in the template. So we call the function inside of the HTML like this. So the name of the function is portfolio component, and we want here to display what this function returns. So let's see. Is there anything? There is another trick. Require bin somehow doesn't allow to scroll down. So we prepared like a little snippet of code with which we can cheat require bin a little bit and hack it so that we can scroll down. So we go to the console, we add the snippet. There's another trick. You have to change something like some space, run the code again, snippet, and when it says undefined, that means that it worked. And now we just click the button again and the scrolling is enabled. Okay, so we have now the web page, and inside of web page, you see web page has a green background, so all this thing is a web page, and inside we display a portfolio component that has a blue background color. So let's see how this works. So we have a function portfolio component that consists of two parts. One is a CSS, and the second thing is a template function, but template function only for this certain component. Okay? And this function returns yo and our HTML. So it creates an element, but when we call the function, we need to return this element. So we create an element, call the function template, and this is stored in the variable element. So var element equals what is returned from the template, and this is this HTML. And then we return element for the whole portfolio component. So when we call this function here inside of the page, it returns the whole thing. So the HTML and the CSS of this portfolio component. Okay, let's take a little bit closer look into our HTML here. In the first part, we didn't use classes yet. We just used, if you remember, just a normal image tag, h1, h3, and that's it. But whenever we use div, we can assign a special class to this div, and then we can style this class. So if we don't have h1, image, whatever, we only want to use divs, we can assign a special class to any of these divs. And when we want to style this div, we basically just make a dot in front and then we can style it as any other normal CSS element, like here when we styled body, h1, h3. So those are also elements, but they're predefined, so that's why they don't need the dot in front. But if we need, if we use elements that use a class, we need to make a dot when we style them in CSS. So we created a portfolio class, and this portfolio class has width 100%. So let's see if we make a 10%, what would change. So this is our portfolio. So this is basically a background. Okay. Then we created a portfolio item inside of this div. So inside of this div is a portfolio item. Portfolio item has a gray color and a blue background. So basically we could add many portfolio items inside of the whole portfolio. So maybe we could even try if we copy paste this. So inside of the portfolio, we create another portfolio item, and let's see what we get. So we get basically 2 portfolio items. Okay. So inside of the portfolio item, we have a title. This is this part. And it says portfolio, my quiz app. And we have a portfolio body that is a description of this portfolio item. So portfolio title is a color pink. It has a background color yellow. Border radius is 4 pixels. There is also a border here, but it's also yellow. If we make it pink, you can see the border, but you will see in the future why we made this border yellow, although it's invisible, but later it will do a little animation, so we need it. And in the portfolio body, this is this part, we basically use color blue. That's why it's currently invisible. If we change it to yellow, it becomes visible. But because we will do a little animation with it, we want to leave it like this. So it's blue, it's invisible, and we have a portfolio title, and this thing is displayed here. Perfect. So now we are ready to add another component. We have another component that is called a text box component. Let's add this thing here. So text box component is also wrapped inside of the text box component function, and it consists of a CSS and function template that returns a yo, and we said that after the function we will create an element that stores what the function returns, and then the whole function text box component will return the element. Okay, we actually don't even need those semicolons. It works also without them. So let's try. Doesn't work. Do you know why? Because we didn't call the function in our web page. So let's call the function after the portfolio, and we said that it's called a text box component. Is it? Text box, okay, all small. So text box component. Let's see if it works now. No, there seemed to be some error. I think the problem is that we didn't change the variable to how we stored it. We stored it with all caps. We could store it also with the small letters, but then we would have to use always small letters inside of the CSS. So gray, okay, now it should work. Yes. So we have a portfolio component, and afterwards we have a text box component. So text box component has color gray. So these are the letters. Background color we didn't change, so it's practically the same as the web page, but we could set it. Let's try it. Background color, let's say it's gonna be pink, always pink, or let's make it yellow. Here in the CSS we need semicolon. Yes, so this is how it would look if we would set the background color. If we do that, then we could add some padding. So that we have some space and so on. But we don't want that, so we can remove the background color and just leave it how it is. So we have gray letters and we have font size 2em, and we want a little bit more space. So we set the line height to 1.5. If we set it to 0.5, you can see that the letters are very squeezed. And if we set it to 4.5, we get like a lot of space between, but we want 1.5. And we want also that the text is text align is justified, which means that it stretches it so that it fills the whole square. If we leave this out, it will be aligned on the left or in the middle, of course, so it doesn't look so good. So that's why we decided for that. If you want to play around and try out the CSS and change some things, you don't have to always change it here and then run the code. You can actually go to your inspect element. So instead of the console, you go to the elements and you can click on the element you want to choose. So you are now in the text box, and now you can see the styling for this element. So you see you have margin, you have color, font size, line height, so everything is here. And now you can basically play with this here. So we can change the font size, you see, and you see how it looks. Okay, you can change this, you can change the line height and so on. So you can go and basically try to restyle each of the elements, and then when you're satisfied, you just copy things inside of your code in your CSS, because this thing, once you refresh the page, just disappears. So if we now, for example, style everything and we say, we won't have the line height and we won't have the text align justify, we want it like this, and then we would go out and we would run the code again, all the things that we changed there would disappear because it would read from our original code. So this is just temporary. Okay, one more thing I need to tell you. You probably noticed that in the web page we styled the tags in the HTML without the dot. I told you why, because we didn't use a class, but we used the predefined elements. And here, because we created classes, we had to use a dot. And I would recommend you always to create classes, because then you can style each of these elements. You can decide in the whole page how you want to call them, so that you also know immediately, aha, this is a portfolio title. But here, because we have only H1, we don't know which part of the code that is. So in the components, try to use classes so that you can know what you are actually styling. Also later, when you want to change something, when you come back, it's way easier to understand what did you style. And one thing, because of that, because we use classes, we also have to make a css.portfolio, so that it takes a CSS and then an element. So this is how we name classes. So always CSS, this comes from here, from the name of the variable. If we would call this variable something else, then we would have to make this name dot and then the name of the class. And yes, that's practically it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too hard. But if you have any questions, there is a chat, so go ahead and ask. Otherwise, go back, roll back the video and check it again. Okay, see you in the next lesson.